News 8 is your local election headquarters, and this year Connecticut is home to one of the most competitive congressional races in the country. Incumbent Democrat Jahana Hayes squaring off with the Republican George Logan in a rematch that could determine the balance of power in the U.S. House. The 5th District stretches across much of the western part of the state, includes parts of 4 counties. News 8 political contributor Mike Cerulli has a look at one of the candidates who wants to represent Connecticut in the nation's capital.
Less than 1 percentage point separated Congresswoman Jahana Hayes and Republican George Logan in their 2022 race. Now Hayes, a Democrat, serves in a Congress where Republicans hold a similarly slim majority. Just 8 seats separate the two parties. George Logan hopes to bolster that Republican majority and go to Washington as a new voice for Connecticut. We sat down with Logan for a conversation about his record and what voters could expect from him if he does get to serve in Congress.
There's just so much to do. There's so much hope. We have so much potential, and I'm looking forward to rolling up my sleeves, getting down to Washington, and really being part of the solution.
Hope is a word you hear a lot when you talk to Republican George Logan. The son of Guatemalan immigrants raised in New Haven, Logan served 2 terms in the state Senate from 2017 to 2021 before moving to the 5th District. Logan points to his voting record in the state Senate as evidence of bipartisanship, proving that to voters will be his biggest challenge as he seeks to win a district that has voted for every Democratic president in this century.
Speaker of the House of Representatives, Mike Johnson!
Logan has already drawn criticism for campaigning with national figures like House Speaker Mike Johnson, who is strongly opposed to abortion rights. Logan says he sees that issue differently.
I've been very consistent in terms of my stance on abortion. I support a woman's right to choose. I support Connecticut's law on abortion, and I will do everything in my power to protect the woman's right to choose.
Logan touting a perfect score he once received from an abortion rights group.
I would not support a national ban on abortion.
On guns, another hot-button issue, Logan voted in favor of Ethan's Law, a bipartisan measure imposing stricter requirements for gun storage, spurred by the death of Guilford teenager Ethan Song.
It's just so important that we work together to solve our common problems, and I look to bring some of that to Washington.
He also voted in favor of the state's landmark bipartisan budget in 2017, one that imposed controls around future state spending after years of fiscal crisis.
That's the type of legislation that I was very much in favor of, right? Working in a bipartisan manner, doing things that's going to actually help the people of the district. And as a result, you're actually seeing some tax cuts coming as a result of that 2017 bipartisan budget.
Logan's record does include some votes that fell largely along party lines. After the 2017 mass shooting at a Las Vegas concert, Logan voted against a measure to ban bump stocks.
Explain that vote.
Sure. So, one, Connecticut has some of the strictest gun laws in all of the United States of America, right? My take is that our issue here in Connecticut is that we need to do more to enforce the laws that we have. When it comes to bump stocks, the reality of it is that anything can be made into a bump stock, including a rubber band, right? So, Mike, we're talking about bump stocks. You and I both know that most folks don't even know what a bump stock is, right? But the issue here is that we need to focus on enforcement.
Logan also voted against raising the state minimum wage to $15.
That bill that you're referring to is that increased minimum wage. It's been a crusher for small businesses, and that was the argument that I made, back then. Let's take a look at restaurants, right? So the minimum wage goes into effect. Restaurants have to raise their rates. They have very small margins, a profitability margin, right? So what do? They pass those increased costs, that extra tax, over to the consumer. So now food prices, are higher, and that's a result of government-induced inflation.
We reached out to Logan's opponent, Congresswoman Jahana Hayes, to conduct a similar conversation about her record, but she declined to be interviewed for this story. She did sit down with News 8's Dennis House last month. We have that conversation on our website. In part 2 of our conversation with Logan, you'll hear more about what he's done and what he plans to do for communities like this one. Waterbury is a key battleground in the 5th District. You'll hear about his record and his vision on issues like public safety and economic opportunity. For now, reporting in Waterbury, I'm Mike Cerulli, News 8.